Welcome to Richard School Modelling. This is part 4 of the Moebius Battlestar Galactica Colonial Raptor, scale 1 to 32. In part 3, I put the main capsule together, the main fuselage, done a little bit of filling and sanding. In part 4, this will be the final part. I'm putting the engines on, doing the weathering and the decals. So let's jump into the build. First thing I have to do is put in the engine support, and this just clips on the back. There's a couple of recess points enables you to guide it in. Just be aware of the two pipes here. They do line up on the back, but there's no actual location point for them. They just sit on the back. Next to go on, there's two little pipes underneath the two ones that are already on the engine assembly. There is location points here for these ones to fit. There's plenty of room to get them in, but you will need tweezers to do so. Now we have the tails to go in. Now these were quite tricky to go in. They go in at a strange angle. The location points for them do stick out at an angle. So you have to put them in an angle, then press them towards the engine assembly to get them to fit. It took a little bit of practice to get it done, so make sure you dry fit these before you do so. You may try not to put the pipes on until you have this piece in. That may help you. I tried it both ways, and in the end I just left the pipes on. Next to the actual engines themselves, you can see the location points there and recess points. Now, they can only go in a certain way. If you remember the beginning of the build, I put it on starboard port. As you can see, it sort of curves inwards here. So just look at your model. If you haven't marked them down which side goes in which, it can be self-explanatory. As you can see, one curves in one way, and the other one will curve in slightly the other way. So they basically point towards each other. If you just put them in the location points in a little crevice here first, then just line them up onto the actual cradle itself, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. They are a tight fit though, but as you can see, once they're in, they do look good. I did manage to knock off the landing platform at the front here, but it's an easy fix and I'll get on to that later on. Next is the wing assembly to go onto the side of the main unit. The respawn points that I'm just pointing out is what you're aiming for. They can be very tight, so just be careful when you're lining them up, and you will have to push them in quite firmly as well for them to connect to the side of the fuselage. So as you can see, I'm having to exert quite a bit of force to place them in. It's just because they're very tight. Now you can sand down the location points or open up the recess points to put them on if you wish. But if you do that, just be careful because you may actually open them up too far. I think it's probably better just to persevere and try and push them in as best as you can. And while I've got it upside down, I'm just going to refit the landing plate. I did actually manage to lose one of the wings ones as well, but they just popped off, as I said, and it was easy enough to fix. Next to go on are the two scoops that go at the front of the wings inside the fuselage. Now the location points of these are well defined as well, but I had to take them off to get it to fit. Unfortunately, it's sort of off camera there, but as you can see here, I'm just pressing it in. If I left the location points on to fit into the recess holes, it just wouldn't have lined up and it would have been too much gapping. So it was either just to snip them off and then place it over the recess points for them to fit. Even though doing that, there was still a little bit of gapping, so I just used my filler to fill the gap. So I'm gently placing it on, and then I'll wipe off any excess with a bit of tissue. You want to do this trying to wipe it off as you go along on this particular one, because it's very difficult to sand down this. So if you use a damp tissue and just go along the contour of the line, you shouldn't need to sand down too much. And now I'm putting in the piston support for the door. There's a little recess point just inside the open way here, it just fits into. It's difficult to get this on camera, just the angle that I have to place it in, but it just sits in there. Try to let this dry before you put the door on, but also still have enough manoeuvrability so you can pin it to the door. The door is straightforward to put on. You can see there my clear windows that I made instead of putting on the plastic. All you have to do is put a little bit of glue along the top of the ridge and place it on, and then gently lower it to the piston, and then manoeuvre the piston onto the little recess point that it slots into. You shouldn't have any difficulty whatsoever. So I'll just move my camera a little bit better so you can see it popping, holding up the door even. So next I'm putting in the cockpit, and I'm using my canopy glue here, and this is an old one, so it's a little bit thicker than the new green one that I have, and I want to use a thicker consistency just so it's not running inside the cockpit. So I'm putting a good amount on here along the ridge. The reason for that is it will bond really well, obviously, and if there is any gaps, but sometimes with canopies, if you don't get them 100% aligned, there could be a little gap. This will act as a filler as well, and of course it dries clear. And then it's a simple matter of fitting the canopy. It's best if you do the forward position first, that there's a little recess point just clips into, and then push it at the back for it to fit. So now that the glue's dried on these scoops, it's time to paint them in 17 Africa brown. Again, don't worry if it's not 100% flat. If you use my method to try and get a smooth layer on your filler, it is a spacecraft and it will have lumps and bumps. As long as there's not too many, you should be okay. So while I'm waiting for everything to dry, I'm just going to glue the stand together. So I'm using my old bottle of canopy glue once more, and just placing the glue inside the recess before fitting the arm. You don't necessarily have to do this, but I always feel it's better to glue the actual arm, just in case it can't handle the weight of the model you're putting it on. And then a little bit of glue on the arm as well, and it just slots into place. I'm using Rebel Aquacolor 43 medium grey to paint the outside frame of the canopy. There's a little pattern that runs around this to show you your line as you're painting. But if you just look at the box the model came in, you'll see the grey strip that goes around the canopy. And once all the paint's dry, it's time to varnish. So I'm using Pledge Clear Polish here, and giving it a nice coat of varnish all the way around the model. So now it's time to prep the decals. So first of all, I'm just cutting them out. So as you can see, I'm fast forwarding this part. There's not that many decals to go on really. There's more going on the underside than the actual size of the model. But they do look quite effective when they go on. So I'm just placing these on the normal way. A bit of decal fix, and using warm water to slide off the decal before placing them on, either using a cocktail stick or a soft brush. Doesn't really matter what you use. But I'm coming to the end of them now, and they went on fairly straightforward. Decals are on, and I've also given another coat of varnish just to seal in the decals. Now it's time for weathering. So first of all, I'm using Amos Make Dust Oil Brush. Now the secret using these oil brushes is just little dots at a time, and then once you put in your little dots, take a clean sheet of kitchen towel, dip your brush in a bit of thinner. I'm using normal white spirits, and then gently stroking the pigment over the area. Now you want to all go into one direction, so imagine a forward movement. So I'm just brushing it and blending it in one direction. The thinner will take most of it off, but you only want a slight sheen in some places. But remember, the thinner can also take off your varnish, so you have to be careful. And the next one you're using is Starship Filth, and this will just darken the panels and other lines, raised areas that I wish to be darkened. And again, same technique, just tiny little dots, and then using my brush, wiping off any excess thinner and just streaking it along. You can see it changing colour here. Now you can have it as dark as light as you like. It will come off straight away, or you can leave it a little bit darker. It's entirely up to you. You can put on as much or little as you like as well, depending on what look you're going for. If you want a heavily used shape, or just one that's slight, it's been washed, for instance. The possible is entirely up to you. And then I'm changing to Starship Base Sludge. Now this one is a little bit thicker than the Filth one, a little bit darker in colour. I'm going to be putting this on a little bit more on the underside. And again, it's all personal choice on how you want it to go. But I want the underside to look a little bit more used and dirtier. If you do think you've put too much on, just use a lighter one to go over the top if it's dried and you can't brush it off, and blend it in. They're so easy to blend in. It's you'll be surprised how easy it is. So I'm doing the same with the engine as well, just putting some of the darker pigment on before going on to Timeless Weathering Master. So this is Weathering Master D, and I'm using the burnt blue pigment on this one first of all. So I'm just putting it around the rim of where the engine is. I'm putting it quite dark, unlike a jet engine. I would think this probably burns a different fuel, so I'm going a little bit darker on this. I think also next to the lighter colour to stand out a bit better. And then finally I'm using the burnt red component just to go over the blue, to give it the sort of flamed hot metal look that you get from exhaust. And I'm just liberally applying this all over and around. So this is the last process of the build, so I'll be bringing the build to an end now. It was a really fun build to crack on with, first real one of the year to sink my teeth into. I would recommend this for anyone, even though there's issues with trying to put the wings on them being very tight. A lot of perseverance, and anyone should be able to handle it. So before I close, the only last thing that really needs to be done to the model is to fit the stand, if you're putting the stand on. As I said, I've got the landing gear down, but I'm still having the stand on because I didn't put just enough weight in the nose. So while that's going on, why don't you think about checking out the other videos on my channel, or indeed for this build as well, see what went on in the past. Subscribe to the channel as well for any upcoming builds that I have got planned. Feel free to leave a comment, hit that like button, do all the usual things. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.